Hi, Anne-Christophe. Thank you for all the kind words. And hi, everyone. I'm Ruth Gill. I'm a designer at Microsoft, and I lead responsible AI practices in my organization within Microsoft, which is called Security, Compliance, and Management. And it's about a 3,000 people organization spread around the globe. Let's start the presentation, shall we? So I want you to meet this person. His name is Professor John McCarthy, and he was one of the forefathers of artificial AI. He actually coined the term artificial intelligence. And when he talked about the domain, he said it's the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, especially intelligent computer programs. And ever since, we are all kind of chasing the dream and chasing this vision of super intelligent beings that a human has created. And it's so smart, it's so clever that it really outsmarts us. And at some point, these intelligent machines are going to come back and destroy everything, kill all of us, right? This is kind of a classical science fiction scenario. But when you're looking at artificial intelligence and its state today, it's quite different. It's like you can think about it as a fancy name or kind of an umbrella term to many different types of technologies that have something in common. But really, each one of them, within each one of them, each one of the models can do something in a great way sometimes, but they're limited into a certain context that they can't jump over. And that context is being defined by a human, someone who created that model. And when we're looking at AI products or the way that they are done today, usually it's not just one model that is doing everything, right, from the beginning to the start. But it's kind of a chain of different models. Each one of them is doing one thing and has its predictions and outcomes, and take that and brings that over to the next one and to the next one. And the orchestration of everything is done again by a human that define what's the ultimate outcome of that entire feature, that entire product. And when looking at differences between kind of traditional programming and machine learning, you can say that in traditional programming, it's the human that defines rules and say, okay, this is how you should behave and this is what should happen. And then the algorithm executes on that. But with machine learning, what's happening is that the human defines the outcome, what they want to see, and then gives the machine learning algorithm a lot of data to work from, and then the algorithm infers what are the rules that could be created to make sure that this outcome can be repeated over and over again. And that results in things that might not be available or might not be happening with traditional programming. So if you want to teach a machine about muffins, right, you show that model many different types of muffins, many different pictures of muffins, and at some point you can ask it, hey, is that a muffin or maybe it's a chihuahua, right? And the machine the algorithm can give you its prediction, hey, yeah, that looks like 75% muffin, but that looks to me like a chihuahua, right? So it's all there, but it's all about probabilities. And this is something that we have to keep in mind when we are talking about machine learning and AI and what it's doing. And looking at the AI market, AI is everywhere, from $20 billion market in 2018. The prediction is that it's going to go up into $200 billion in 2026, which means that, that's less than 5 years from now, right? So it means that even if you're not working on AI related product right now, you will probably do that in less than 5 years. And AI can do really, really exciting things, right? Especially in the creative domain. It can generate human-like text for you, right? It can write your next blog post or your book or your essay for a school, right? Just pay it some money, or pay the people some money. It can take different pictures, different photographs, and merge them together and create some wild and bizarre things. It can even design your app for you if you kind of talk to it, write to it. So Jordan Singer, in this example, trained a model and created a Figma plugin. And what you can do with that plugin is really just type the text of what you want. And in that case, I don't know if you can read that, but it asked it to do something that pretty much looks like Instagram, as you can see in the example on the right. And it can edit the video for you just by using text. You can have hours of fun with deepfakes videos that you can create yourself, right? If you just pay $29.99, or can do many other really great things, right? Developing drugs, identifying skin cancers, find security breaches, do all kinds of really, really amazing things. But this is not that simple, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it. Let's try to unpack some of the challenges of these AI-infused systems. So the first thing is AI is probabilistic and it's prone to errors. So I'm from Seattle. I live in Seattle. And 2 years ago, there was a big forecast, a weather forecast, about a huge snowstorm. And that was supposed to be the greatest snowstorm that Seattle or the Pacific Northwest have known for years. And everyone panicked. The grocery stores ran out of food. There was no kale to be found. After all, it is Seattle. And everybody was kind of bracing themselves for the apocalypse. And then some snow fell down, and after about 2-3 days, it melted, and we all survived, as can be proved with this t-shirt. And you can think about weather forecast as a great metaphor for AI. Why? Because it's scientific, right? So it means that it is reliable. Not so much, right? And our role as designers and as product creators is really to design for that tension between the perception and the reality, right? And we need to make sure that our users understand that whatever it is that they're seeing, or the predictions that they're experiencing, they probably are right, but we're not 100% sure. And this is something that's really, really important, the being able to be transparent about the ability of your system, because it will always make mistakes. It will always be wrong. It is based on probabilities, right? Another aspect is that AI learns and it changes over time. And this is the big promise of AI, right? this is it's amazing. You're training that model and it can do some things, and you put it out there and it just goes and it learns and it gets better. But not always, sometimes it doesn't work as you expect it to work. Like in this case, where a journalist got pregnant and she started posting about it in social media, as we all do, right? And she started seeing all these ads about pregnancy. And then at some point, she lost her baby. And that was really sad and tragic. And she kept seeing all these ads. So she told the social media app, listen, I don't want to see that anymore, right? They had a feedback mechanism. I don't want to see that anymore. It's not relevant for me. And then the reaction from that site was, hey, that's not relevant for her. She must have had a baby. So she started seeing all these ads about baby products, which made everything even worse. What I want you to take from this is that you can't just put a model in the world without supervision, the way that you wouldn't send a toddler into the world and say, yeah, just go, come back tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. You have to supervise. You have to make sure that they're doing the right things. They're not running into the road and getting hurt or hurting someone else. We tend to talk about AI as a hard technical problem, but really it is a hard human problem, right? Because it touches everything, everyone in our society, from the individual to whole demographics. And here's an example of what can happen when things don't go well. And this is a video that was created by Joy Buolamwini, who is one of the founders of the Algorithmic Justice League. So if you can play that video, please.
I've got a face. Can you see my face? No glasses face? You can see her face. What about my face? Well, I've got a mask. Can you see my mask?
Yeah, so this thing actually started kind of a big research, very important research about exclusion and about what happens when algorithms don't include everyone and don't think about all the different aspects of what they're trying to do. And that eventually led to this research project, the Gender Shades Project, that was led by Joy Buolamwini and Timnit Gebru and other stellar people in the community. And what this Gender Shades project did was to look at how well do facial recognition apps, models perform when it comes to men and women, to people with dark skin and with light skin. And what it found some really interesting things. But what I want to focus on, kind of the highlight, was that there was a really big difference between how this system recognized white male versus how this system recognizes Black women. And the gap between them was, at the worst, 34%, which is huge. It's really talking about erasure of Black women in that space, right? And Kate Crawford, who's a researcher in that area, a very known one, said, what is interesting about training data sets is that they will always bear the mark of history, that history will be human, and it will always have the same kind of frailty and biases that humans have. So let's look at some of these things, some of these inequalities or biases. So facial recognition, this gentleman was accused and arrested because of an algorithm, not because of something that he did. There was a robbery at the jewelry shop, and there was a model, an algorithm that scanned the pictures from the robbery and decided that, hey, this guy must be the person who did that. And then police came and arrested him, and he did not know what was going on. And when, in hindsight, when we looking at these pictures, they don't even look alike, right? But no one stopped to ask, hey, this is not the same person. Over trusting that algorithm really created a lot of damage. And that was maybe the first documented case, but it's not the last. There have been others after that. And then law professor from Harvard, Latanya Sweeney, discovered during an interview with a journalist something really interesting. That journalist Googled her during that conversation and asked her, hey, so what about your criminal records? And she said, what? A law professor at Harvard, after all. And then she discovered that when he Googled her, the ads that he saw were implying that she had criminal records, right? And then she tested it with other names, with other people, and discovered that those with typical African-American names had this kind of ads that implied that they actually had criminal record, regardless of who they were. And looking at ads again, turns out that men are exposed to more ads that promote wealth building than women, right? And that Black people see more ads that are connected to renting apartments, while white people see more ads that promote buying houses, right? So it's also about wealth and how the access to possibilities. And then cases where autonomous cars don't recognize pedestrians with dark skin, or dermatology apps that are supposed to recognize all kinds of skin diseases and cancers that don't work well on people with dark skins. And this is a known issue for years, or problems with inclusion in recruiting, in speech recognition, lack of transparency in AI assistants that kind of hide and pretend to be humans where they're not. Or this case where people hacked, and this is possible, to hack those systems. So in that case, you can see pretty benign stop sign with some stickers on it. But what it turns out that these stickers they can really fool computer vision algorithms and make them see, instead of this stop sign, that the speed limit is of 45 miles per hour. And this is something completely different, right? It's very dangerous if that happens. So the problem, as I see it, is really not about these big bad robots that are going to kill us, and wipe humanity from Earth. It's really dying of neglect, because we're not paying attention to all these features and products that we put in the world, and we're just focusing on this technology hubris. No one did that before. We should do that, right? So maybe if we kind of stopped for a moment and breathe and kind of took a look and pay attention to things, maybe that will make things better. And companies already recognize the problem with ignoring these issues. So nearly 9 in 10 organizations across countries have encountered ethical issues resulting from the use of AI. This is a Capgemini research from 2019. On the other hand, the same research found that when products, when features act in a way that perceived as ethical, users love it. They get to trust this brand more. And the NPS score, which is used to, at the end, predict business success, has shot up 44 points, which is a lot. So as Melvin Kranzberg said, technology is neither good nor bad, nor is it neutral. And to make sure it is going to the right side, to the good side, we need to work from values. We need to work from principles, right? To make sure that we're following the path that we do want to follow, because bias will always exist. You know, bias is something that is ingrained within us from our early day, the early days of humanity. But the question is, can we lead that bias into the place that we wanted, or we are led by this bias? So when we are talking about responsible AI and designing responsibly, it means that we are taking those values, those principles, and putting them into action. And this is the set of the 6 Microsoft AI principles: privacy and security, fairness, transparency, accountability, inclusion, reliability. Other big companies and other companies have their own set of principles, but when you're looking at them, you can see that they're all very similar. You know, everybody is landing in the same ballpark. And the pillars of responsible AI are being human-centered, you know, putting people at the center. That's the focus. It's principled. It's built on these principles. It's collaborative. People from all disciplines are working together. It's proactive. We're not waiting until something bad happens, but we are making sure ahead of time that we are considering all the different possibilities and kind of preventing as much as possible. And then it's contextual. So it's not just about the model, it's not just about the technology, but it's how do you use that technology? So if you're trying to log into your computer, you know, using facial recognition, that's fine. But if you're using the same technology to identify people at a demonstration so you can throw them later to jail, maybe this is not so much okay, right? Maybe it's a problem there. And going back to being collaborative, responsible AI is really not just about data science and data scientists. You can't put everything on their shoulders, but it's about all disciplines working together. And why is that important? Because different disciplines bring in different aspects, different perspectives, and they can recognize harms from their perspective in their domain. And at the same time, they can, when looking at how to solve or how to mitigate those issues, they bring different perspectives from how they solve issues in their domain. So together, there is really a holistic understanding both of the problem space and the solution space. And lastly, responsible AI is not something that you do once and that's it. It's something that you need to do over and over again in different ways across the entire product lifecycle, including after you have launched the product. And each one of the stages have different tools that you can use to solve or to mitigate or to explore. And when you're thinking about an organization, right, what do you need to do to activate responsible AI in an organization? First, you need to have this responsible AI leadership, people that are that know what is responsible AI, that know how to think about it, but also understand the organization itself, understand the culture, and can bridge these two things together and create those processes that are necessary and that match the culture of your organization, match the culture of your company. Then you need to understand what does the team need to be educated about, right? What do they need to know? How do you make sure that people understand both responsible AI, the tools, what their options are, and that changes from discipline to discipline. And the last one, and really the most important thing, and this is what we're doing everything for, is implementing in product teams, right? Making sure that it reaches the product itself. So to do that, you need to assess the impact of that AI feature on the world, on the user, on society, based on the harms that you're looking both at benefits and harms, but based on the harms that you found, you create responsible AI release plan. What's the minimum bar that beneath it, you really don't want to release something into this world. You need to still work on some things before that. And then after you're releasing, having an ongoing evaluation plan. How do you make sure that things stay on course? And now I'm going to talk about one of the tools that we're using, which is the Human AI Design Guidelines, to ensure that we are aligned with our principles. Because the good news is that many times issues that are caused by AI don't necessarily need to be solved within the model. They can be solved through good design that can mitigate that. And a group of researchers, user researchers, designers from across Microsoft try to kind of bridge the gap between these high-level principles and what happens actually in the teams and the tools that we can give them. And this is how the guidelines for human AI interaction came about. This is a distillation of 30 years of academic research, of industry research, and taking all of these things together and trying to narrow it down to, let's say, a set of guidelines that people can work with. And you can see that there are 18 guidelines divided into 4 groups, and each one of the groups is more important at one stage of the relationship between an AI system and the user. And if you want to read about the process, there's a CHI paper. But let's dive and see some examples. So the first group is what happens initially. In that case, the guideline is making clear how well the system can do what it can do, which really means setting expectations. So in the example on the left, Facebook is being very humble and saying, hey, these are people you may know, but they're not sure that they actually know them. So they're using this type of language. And then Zoe, the social bot, is making typos on purpose. Why? Because the creators knew that it's going to make mistakes. So let's prime the users to begin with to make them understand that Zoe is not perfect. And then, what happens during interaction? Let's look at mitigating social biases and use this notorious query, the CEO query. And it used to be that when you when you wrote CEO as a query, you got this group of mainly white middle-aged men. If you wanted to see something else, you had to go to the subqueries and look for it explicitly. And then the team at Bing, user researchers, designers, data scientists started to work together, thinking through the lens of this mitigating social biases and thinking, well, the reason why we're seeing all that is because of interaction bias, because whatever the the past results were, where people started clicking on things, the more you clicked on the same things, you saw more of the same thing, right? So it's kind of a loop. So if we started from just white men, this is what we're going to see forever. But so they did a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of options, trials and errors. And what you see today is really something quite different, right? Way more diverse. If you still want to see just men, you can still do that. You have to go to the subqueries. And then what happens when the system is wrong? And we're always wrong. This is kind of a given. This is PowerPoint, and actually in any app in Office, if you're inserting a picture, what you get is what we call alt text, which is text generated to help people who are low vision or blind to understand what's going on in a picture. So get a better sense of what's happening in what they can't see. But sometimes, it's machine generated and it gets things wrong, or maybe it doesn't reflect the real intention. So supporting efficient correction is really important. And this is what we're doing. We're giving the user an option to just change that text if needed. And then last but really not least is the group of what happens over time, right? We're talking about relationship here. So encouraging granular feedback is very important. And the feedback, getting feedback from users is great for two things. One, the system learns from that feedback, right? We're feeding this information and retraining our model. But the second thing, which is as important, it also creates a stronger relationship between that user and the product, right? Because if I, as a person, start to invest my time and give feedback to the system, with a big caveat that we need to, as the product creators, we need to make sure that they understand what we do with the feedback and how it's going to influence what they're going to see in the future. But if we do this right, this is creating a greater bonding between that user and our product, right? Building trust in the system, making them feel more in control, all very important things. So maybe you ask, okay, this is great, but why should I care? What does it have to do with me? So after the guidelines were created, there was research done around, okay, what happens if these guidelines show up in a product or being violated by it, which means they don't show up in a product. And what this research found was that when the guidelines were showing up, people tended to trust that product more, and they felt more in control, and they thought that the product was reliable, and overall they felt more productive, right? So this is important. If you care for these things, pay attention. So we wanted to get this into our product, and we started running workshops that audit the user experience and figuring out what's going on with the guidelines. Are they there, not there? And this workshop had 3 parts. One of them was about defining core guidelines. What is the core set of guidelines? Then auditing with sample scenarios. And this is for practicing purposes. And then doing a backbash, which means looking at the experience and figuring out what goes wrong. And why is it important to have a core set? Because it's a commitment. It's a really big commitment of a team in manpower, in resources, in time, in mind share, right? So 18 is overwhelming. No one can follow 18. And in many cases, not all of them are that relevant to any given feature. But there's always that core 5, 6 guidelines that are really important. And this focus really brings alignment to the entire team, right? People from all disciplines make that decision together. And then whatever they need to do afterwards, everyone understands why they're doing it. And they are working from values because that's their values, the ones that they chose and they prioritized. So if you're working on a notification system, timing services based on context will be important. If you are creating a recommender system, right, making clear why the system did what it did is very important. I see all these files. Oh, why do I see this one? Oh, because so-and-so mentioned me, right? Now, the other thing is that if we do get it wrong, right, we always get things wrong, and you have good explanation, then the user is also more forgiving because it can understand the system. And if you give them a way to correct that incorrectness, then even better. So as a team, everybody, we begin with some learning activity, and then everyone on the team votes for the guidelines they think that are important. And the top 10 are the ones that we continue with. And we continue with practicing with a simple task. You can think about it like maybe cognitive walkthrough with the lens of the guidelines. So each one of these little icons represent a guideline, and actually the team members who are participating, they can just pull those icons into the places in the interface that said, yeah, this is a violation of guideline 1, and then we have a discussion about why. This is really important because no one knows how to do that, right? For everyone, it's like a first timer. So just that discussion and that practice of how to recognize a failure and how to think about what each one of these guidelines and what do they mean in the context of that feature. And then again, then each participant decides, okay, this is my top 5. And we're having a discussion about that. People explain why they think that these are the ones that should be the part of that core set. And then we vote again for the top 5. And this is the result of the team working together, aligning on what's important to them, aligning from their understanding of their product, aligning on what are the things that are most important to ensure that they will result in good experience at the end. And then we do a bug bash and put it in, we do it in Azure DevOps. I don't know what's your favorite DevOps system, but whatever it is, make sure that you can query the bugs later, and you can say, okay, let's have a look. What's going on with guideline 16? Are we there yet? Because there could be multiple bugs associated with any given guideline. So doing that is really important because it makes things real. It makes it a work item that someone on the team, whether they were part of that big audit or not, they know, okay, I need to go and work on that. And this is also a baseline for creating a new design North Star that does align with guidelines. So to wrap up, AI is awesome, but it's also a really hard human problem that we all need to think about all the time when we are creating those AI products. And we really, really, really need to pay attention and come with intent and work from our values and principles. Otherwise, we're just going to die of neglect. It's like death from 1,000 cuts, paper cuts. And if AI is electricity, or like the former presenter called it neon, right? This is a very common metaphor for AI these days. Then responsible AI is like the insulation tape or the plastic that surrounds the wires, because it really makes sure that electricity can flow into the places that it needs to flow and power it, and do all the great things that it needs to do, but at the same time keeps everyone else safe, right? Because you don't, it can't harm you when it's insulated. So with this, I'd love to know if there are any questions, if we have time for questions. And you know what, before that, this picture, I just want to talk about it for a minute. That's me a year ago in Milano, in Kate Crawford's and Trevor Paglin's exhibition called Training Human, which was all about years, the history of how data, facial data and personal data was collected in the past, 50, 60 years, and the practices and the implications. So you can see here that my phone is really between 4 to 6 years old, and it's a male, and it's really frightful right now. So yeah, I will leave you with that. Thank you.